Hey, it's Mark. I'm here with Steve Isaacs. We're in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. We came and checked out one of our teachers in the pilot program. We wanted to get into his head and see what's inspiring him with VR and tech in the classroom.
Sure. VR is extremely exciting, to say the least. And it's funny because I think a lot about, we talk a lot about the wow factor and trying to get beyond the wow factor. And I don't want to devalue the wow factor for starters, because that's where we are with it right now. And watching the kids and today, our administrators and teachers experience that, I think is an important, starting point in terms of that inspiration and seeing what's possible, and hopefully getting that spark going in some of these kids, like, wow, I could do something with that. And now, because everything that I do with my kids is about, creating, I teach game design and development. So, everything around finding tools and opportunities and resources for them to create what might excite them is really important. And I think VR opens an incredible door to that. Now, my students, myself, we need to really get in there and figure out where can we, build, what can we do, what can we create that other people can, experience and wander through and lead to whatever's going to be next. I mean, I would love to see them develop full-on, VR games, but I'm excited to see a kid who can, create something, whether it be with SketchUp or in Unity or Unreal Engine, and put on the goggles and walk through their creation for the first time. I think it's going to bring things to a different level. I mean, similar to when a kid creates a game and plays it for the first time. But I mean, I think this is really exciting, and then to see where we go, from there. I just want to see what the kids can do with it, for sure.
So we brought the Vive today, and you had some students witness kind of the Oculus and some other VR hardware. What would you say was a memorable moment for today, like for some of the kids? Like, do you have a specific moment when a kid was going through it?
It was, I'm trying to. I wish we had videotaped the one kid who, was very animated when he realized he could kind of get down on the ground and was like, and it was just awesome. It was like, the way we did it today is mostly, we all were kind of part of the experience, but there was one kid experiencing it at any time, and for the other kids to experience it kind of through this kid's eyes, I think was pretty cool. And not just him, all of them, but he didn't hold back.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh my God, like all that, and I think it just, opened up a lot of possibilities in his mind, and we saw a lot of that, I think, today. But there was, that one in particular will always stick out. And actually, another thing that was really pretty exciting for me today is very many of the administrators in our district wandered through class today, and we were certain to put them all in the Vive experience. And the kids are all about it, or bought in, everything. I think hearing and seeing the administrators kind of have that light bulb moment where they're like, oh, and my principal immedially thought to the possibilities for kids with disabilities, especially with the Oculus, because you could do so much with just the head tracking. So there were a lot of those kind of like, I think it planted a pretty great seed for everybody who was experienced. But it was nice to see the kids are just awesome, and I knew they were gonna, be so excited. But to see that other side of the teachers, the administrators that had no idea, what VR is about, to kind of now leave today, going home and saying, wow, I gotta tell you what I did today.
Yeah. You bring in the administrators, you have the students try it.
I'm sorry, can I go back to the last question for a second? Because you said what were some of the moments, and what I gotta say too is what brought all the administrators in, actually. My principal came down this morning. She experienced In Blue, that's what it's called. So she, was up close and personal with a whale, probably for the first time in her life, I'd say. she immediately went to her office and shot out an email to all the administrators, like, you gotta come here, check this out. You know, and that, I mean, so when one person starts that, and you know, where that can go, I mean, I think, that was a pretty great moment.
Yeah, that actually ties into my question about, the next question is, you have a lot of you give a lot of opportunities for people to come in and try the Oculus and even the Vive and everything. Why do you think that's a very important part of like virtual reality experience in itself?
Yeah, similar, you know, to what I said about the administrators. When when a teacher that doesn't even know what they're curious about sees what's going on in my room and walks in, and I, you know, say, oh, you know, you got to try it, and I sit them down and they try it again. It's like, it's just amazing. Like, I mean, you know, I'm you know, a geeky kind of guy, and I love tech, and I'm up on a lot of things. A lot of people that walk into the room, either they have heard of it but have never tried it and are excited that they have the opportunity here, or the ones who have no idea what VR even is and get that first experience. I mean, it's like, I think I'm getting, you know, a real kick out of raising that awareness and just making people know what's out there, and you know, then they bring it, and then they could come in and say, you know, I'd like to do this with my kids. There's a special education class that's in here every day, and a couple times, you know, I've been able to, you know, have the kids in there just try it because they're in the room, you know, and that kind of stuff has been a lot of fun.
The going from the Oculus to the Vive, do you now have a greater sense of where you want to go with virtual reality and where you are in virtual reality? Not like in virtual reality,
yeah.
With virtual reality in your life.
You know, wow. I mean, the physical piece, like I always thought when the Kinect, you know, came out, I haven't done much with it yet, but just the idea that if kids could, you know, for one, use it, you know, there's so many applications, but also to create things that they could do with it, you know, that took us from sitting down to play video games to standing up and doing things.
Yeah.
Similar situation here. I mean, I'm still super excited about the Oculus and what we can do with that, and seeing the kids with it and that experience. But I guess, again, there's a different feeling of the being in the Oculus and sitting and, you know, compared to like, as I have kids create, like if they create a building and a hallway and they can walk through it, which the Vive will probably make easier, you know, that's pretty cool. And the types of games, like I could totally imagine an adventure game where you're, you know, kind of walking through, and I think I saw it also for the Vive. There was that video, there's some wacky, I don't know if it's a circular thing, you know what I'm talking about, where you can, it's another device that I think it's almost like a treadmill, but it's got all sorts of other things, like it can go in different directions and stuff.
Oh.
So it's like, you know, then the kids you're up and mobile, but like, you know, I guess there's the question in my mind, like, okay, so if I create an adventure game and I am still confined by this space and I walk to here, what happens then? You know, and this other thing, if there's the opportunity to, you know, almost like a treadmill-y type of thing, I mean, that just adds, you know, another, just let's keep thinking about what's possible, you know, be flying around the room and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and it seems like going from like the Oculus to the Vive and having that kind of mobility, like walking around, then you're forced to actually see the next steps, and you see the barriers of that itself, like you just mentioned. Like now now instead of just creating an experience right here where you can move around, now you can create experience to here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know?
But you're still
right.
Right.
So that's a very interesting point.
Yeah, and today, you know, I had asked about and I'm still kind of curious about this, but when we were in Blue, you know, you see that drop off, and I'm like, you know, there's got to be, we can't be too far from going down and exploring. I mean, we do that in other games without VR, so when we can do that in VR, I mean, you know, like we're still sort of on this, like we have 3D, we have the Z, you know, plane, but we're not like, you know, it seems like there's a lot more to explore, you know, as we uncover, like you said, those obstacles.
So you've played with the Oculus, you played with the Vive, you played with the Gear VR as well?
I haven't yet. There was something I played with this weekend. We were at the Global Game Jam, and they were doing, some people were even developing for VR. There was, I think it's called, I mentioned it before, the Fubrio or something like that, and that's more of like it's like the cardboard in a sense, but it's a more, better structured device, in terms of the comfort with the, the Google Cardboard, you're holding it the whole time.
Yeah.
So this at least has the strap, and it seemed to be really flexible with fitting any phone. So that opens up a lot of possibilities, which, I've been real excited about the Gear, but that's limiting because of the Samsung. So this Fubria, I think it's called, and it dealt a lot with like the accelerometer and things, and there was jumping activity, and some of it's still a little weird because you're like doing this to do certain things. So I'm interested to see where developers go with that. But there's something else I just read about. But what other, are there other devices that are hot on the trail?
The main ones I'm seeing are like Oculus, the Vive, the Gear VR, and then the Cardboard, the main ones. And then we're also looking into the PlayStation VR also.
Right.
Which is an interesting thing. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about wanting to see what that looks like in the classroom.
Yeah.
But with PlayStation, they already have this identity of gaming. And so how can you kind of integrate that into the classroom, or even try to get away from that? Because the moment you have a PlayStation VR, you probably work with the hype in itself of the game, but then can you actually port to the PlayStation VR and things like that for those kind of learning moments like you would get with porting to the Vive, porting to the Oculus?
And that brings me back to I have kids working on Project Spark on the Xbox, Mario Maker on the Wii, and we have the PlayStation. We have the PlayStation 4. I got it for Little Big Planet because that you could develop in that. So as long as they're, each of these, they seem to be competing for knowing that we need opportunities for kids to create or for people to create. So if they have that mindset when they bring PlayStation VR into play, and even, you think again, and if you come back to a game like Minecraft would give you both, you're building, so you're creating in VR and an experience hopefully that people would see as an experience that might be designed more for VR than just whatever you would do in Minecraft. So the minute that games like that naturally port over, or they create other things, I guess that's what the interesting thing will be. I hope we could get the ear of developers and have them know, kids want to create, so as long as we sort of nurture that through what they throw out there for products like that, then we're okay. Otherwise, like you say, they're just going to be building games that kids slap the headphones on, the goggles on and play, which would be great and fun. But that's not, all I want out of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned developers, and we've seen that with some other teachers, that trying to get the ear of the developers is one of the barriers. Do you want to speak on that, or even speak on any other barriers you're finding with virtual reality?
Yeah, well, it's funny, the ear of developers, I've done pretty well with making connections, and building relationships. So it's a matter of keeping that going, and Suter and I have been talking about creating more of a VR in education community. And once we invite and hopefully get buy-in from developers, all my experiences with developers is that they want support, they want to collaborate, as long as they are reminded that we're out here to work with them. Now, are the hardcore game developers going to, be aware of that, or do we have to, do a little more networking to get there? And we can do it. But I think those relationships are key. I've seen it in so many. I think that's where the answer is getting people to talk, bringing everybody to the table. And I've seen it successful in a lot of environments, and now we'll just do it in VR.
So VR is this new technology, or at least this wave of technology is coming into the classroom. Can you think back to another technology that you've tried to bring into the classroom, or another technology that you wanted to bring into the classroom and throughout your career?
Well, it's all I've done in my career is tried to bring technology to the classroom in unique ways. So, I started out my career teaching more traditional computer courses, and I really wanted to get kids creating games because of the the incredible education value, right? So that's always been what I've been pushing in, and I think of something like when we first started working with Portal 2, and the level editor, and it's interesting when you think of the technology part, we didn't have computers that could really handle it, so I had to push hard to make that work, right? And that's going to be a big issue with virtual reality, without a doubt. But all sorts of game design software. I mean, if you look around my room, I've got all the different consoles. My goal is to put resources in kids' hands and see what they can do with them. So yeah, you name it. I've tried to bring it in or at least explore it. But that's what I'm all about.
I'm glad to hear that you have that kind of drive to bring the unique technology into classrooms, at least uniquely. Do you have any advice for teachers who are kind of apprehensive or just don't have that exposure or anything? What would you tell these teachers that they're on the cusp of that?
Well, that's where I think bringing the teachers in and sitting them in a seat and getting them to play and experience is incredible, and maybe having those conversations about what's possible and bringing people together around that. It's so important to remind teachers to play, and that's been a big thing in the work that a lot of my colleagues and I, in games, we're all about getting teachers to play. I've done some professional development, around Minecraft, and even for teachers that don't necessarily know if it's something they're going to use, but hear about it, and we get them in the game, playing, learning like kids, letting the kids expose them to things. I mean, everything I know about Minecraft I learned by being around the kids, and other games. My feeling is my goal is to get the kids excited and started and let them far surpass me, in terms of what I can do. So in terms of if you're talking about the fear of bringing things in and that comfort level in things, I think we have to let go of that, and that's a huge it's a huge thing. I think the magic happens when we start to see that we can do that, and I think it's the hardest thing to do initially, and the most transformational thing we can do as educators. There's a lot that we can do if we change our thinking, shift that mindset a bit.
Yeah, you said play a few times.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more? It sounds like you were saying, not just play for the fact of I want to blow off some steam and play a video game or anything, but it sounds like it's along the lines of exploring and just kind of going into. Can you expand more on that idea and why you think that's important?
Sure. Well, for one, I think we're moving towards the belief that we need, or that we should bring more play and games in the classroom and things, right? I find for myself, the more I play games, whether it be a tabletop game or just play, but that's where I'm learning, exploring. I mean, that's how kids learn, that's how kids explore. But what I'm finding more recently too is as I'm playing it might be me, but as I'm playing a tabletop game and I start to get intrigued by the mechanics and the game and what how this can be extended and what conversations we can have around this, and there and I just think that I think it's so important for us to just remember that, and more so, I guess, not so much more from the perspective of again going back to that's how we learn, that's how kids learn, and if we could embrace that, and I'll take it a step out of the play thing for a second, but talk about informal learning spaces, because that's very important. And what I notice is if you ever watch a kid and how they learn outside of school, we have a lot to learn from kids, right? And we have this thing where we think that they do that at home, and then they come to school and they do school, right?
They flip on that way of learning.
Right, right, which I don't really understand, because if we leverage the way they learn in informal spaces and at home, which play plays right into, I think then we have a really rich place to work from. And again, I have my own girls at home, and my daughter is incredible at learning what she wants to learn, when she wants to learn it, and applying that. And then, because so much of that comes from things like YouTube and stuff, and then she's the one creating the YouTube videos for other people, and she's excited about that. So she's learning, video production. I don't think she knew she was interested in video production, and that sort of thing. So it's like, and that's what kids are doing. I have kids, now in class creating, tutorial videos and step-by-step tutorials and things to teach things that they are expert at, right? And we need to allow that. That's how learning is evolving, I think. And we forget, like you said about it, I love the way you put that. We change the switch, we change the channel, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, that was cool. So you did this great stuff at home. Now let's open to page 57 in the textbook.
Yeah. So okay. You mentioned, and I love that what you said. You mentioned that at some point you want the students to. That's what my question is. How do you know, or what do you think success for a student is? What does that look like to you?
That's a great question. So it's interesting. If you watch kids, play games, we see success through repeated failure, right? Mm-hmm. And we see that excitement that comes from success of overcoming a challenging situation, right? And it's a really exciting thing to see, and it's exciting for them. That's a form of success, right? Mm-hmm. So likewise, and again in my teaching, there's success that comes out of creating a product they could be proud of. Mm-hmm. And because of the challenges that come within that, when you're creating a game, you run into a lot of obstacles, and you run into a lot of challenges and problems that you have to solve, and it's an authentic challenge, right? So that success comes from the being ready to pull your hair out, but knowing you're determined, and then coming out the other side, right? So to me, that's success, and again, and having, I have kids, it's different for different kids, right? So I have one kid last semester who just took to these. There's this website I love now called Snap Guide, and you build really just step-by-step tutorials with screenshots, and I have a certain number of experience points kids need to get an A+, which is like 700 or whatever. So she reached 700 points maybe 3 weeks ago. And every night I'm still getting a tweet from her, hey, I finished another Snap Guide, check it out. And part of that is, for one, she's, I guess, appreciating that she's putting something out there and completing it. But she's now part of this community where she's getting, comments on these and people thanking her for putting them out there. And it's a whole different thing. So she's not, so success, my class ended, but she's still, going to keep going. Success is the kid, the parent that writes me and says, why do you give my kid so much homework? They have all this other work, and I have to respond and say I didn't give any homework. And it's because they're going home and they're working on that. They're working on what they want to keep working on. So success is letting kids find their passion and pursue that and realize that they discovered that somewhere.
It's cool. We have this kind of thing that goes around the community or the culture of foundry10. That success is we had a student who wanted to make a video game, and so they did the internship and everything, and they loved video games. They played video games all their lives and everything. They found themselves as a huge gamer, and then they were like, so that inherently makes me want to make video games.
Right.
They make the video game. They were like, I want to make this free roaming sandbox video game. We pair them up with a developer, and they're like, let's make a street that you can walk around, and so that they can scale it.
Right.
So they made that, and that's like them scaling it down. And at the end of the program, we asked the students, so what do you think? And they were like, I never want to make a game again.
Okay.
And so we think that the sentiment is that because I like this, I want to go into this.
Right.
But the truth is, that was a successful program for him.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, they could have went 4 years into school and then do it, and then realize they don't want to do that.
Right.
But what he learned were all these attributes of like time management, program management, all these different things. And then he actually ended up coming back for a different type of internship.
Right.
So it also taught us like maybe the project itself was not necessarily a failure,
Right.
but it was a decision that I don't want to do this anymore,
Mhm.
so I'm going to go over here,
Right.
make a decision over here, and find out what I love.
Yeah.
Like you said about your daughter, didn't know that she was into video
Right.
or production, but because of the curiosity that the exploring or the playing,
Yeah.
she was able to go into that. So.
Absolutely. And to that point too, like, when we give kids choice and things, I have kids that, and it's funny because we experienced that. I was at the Global Game Jam this weekend, and for one, it was really cool to experience what it's like to be one of my students for a weekend. That was awesome. And we had a team, and we saw what it's like to work in a team and all that. In my class, what I love to see is that, the kids, the idea is they're going to create a game, but, they're not all going to program the game, right? And when they start to find that within that larger umbrella of creating a game, that they're interested in one part, and one of them all of a sudden realizes they like creating pixel graphics and is the graphic designer for that team and all that. And then another one's like, I'll play around with the sound. And then I get this great team of three, and you see them working, and just like I experienced this weekend, there are times, if I can, say, hey, I need this graphic, and then the kid who's now the graphic guy or gal is all of a sudden like, oh, I can do that, and they do that, I'm doing my part, and then they pass it over. So much rich, stuff in finding what their interest is or not.
Yeah. There's so much there to try to find, approaching it as kind of dismissive of, can someone be interested in VR? It's kind of a silly question because you can be interested in so many different, VR is so many different aspects. Like you said, it could be, graphic design, it could be asset design, it could be, music production, it could be project management and things like that. And so, for someone to say, I'm not into that, it's, that's really dismissing the intricacy of VR in itself. Last question. How do you think with VR, or even just technology in itself, how do you see kind of the teacher-student kind of roles? How do you think that's changed?
Well, I'm sorry, did you say specifically with VR? Or
we could say, I was going to go with VR, but we could say in general, because I'm noticing that, like you mentioned earlier, this was my previous question, when you mentioned earlier that sometimes they end up teaching you or something like that, but that sentiment, and even vice versa, like they teach you, or even you mentioned you going to the hackathon and you were kind of one of your students.
Right.
So how is that role, we'll use VR as an example.
Sure.
But because it's so huge and there's so many different experiences, but how has that role changed in the past?
Well, and I could answer kind of VR or anything, because it's the same answer really. But VR, I don't know anything about developing for VR, right? So if my kids are interested, a lot of my classes, like, you're interested in that, you're going to go out there and learn. I'm here to support you. I'll sit next to you when, learn a little bit with you and do the best I can. So co-learning is a term I love, and I love my kids seeing me model learning. I love the kids seeing that I don't have to be the expert and that I can let them know that. I love that point when a kid, Minecraft's another great example here. I've had kids who have, we do these projects in Minecraft, and for what they need on a server, I'm not the one who's going to make that work for them. So I'll have a kid who will all of a sudden become the server, engineer or whatever, and that's their role. And the kid will be nice enough to teach me enough admin and op commands that I can at least do what I need to do within the server, So there's a lot of that, and I think there's a lot of, I think it's all about that. I think it's all about letting kids, empowering them in the process, right? Letting them, dream big and figure it out. And like you said before, too, about sometimes finding out, maybe, right, so maybe the teacher's role sometimes is scaling it back slightly to make it a little more realistic, right? Like, I don't have to be the one to say, but I could say, let's start, so I can guide kids. I have some wisdom, but it's definitely in a perfect world, it's, it's a learning environment,
Mhm.
and with all the great new stuff, I mean, the kids can find out pieces and teach each other and all that. I mean, it's rich if we let it happen.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for having us here.
Thanks for coming.
Let us know if you have any questions.
Probably one of the best days in my professional career.
I'm glad. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for tuning in too. We'll have our next podcast up pretty shortly, but yeah, we'll be here in New Jersey and checking out the vibe.